Here is our interview with Chris Fenton. The name of the book, Inside the $1 Trillion Dilemma Facing Hollywood, the NBA, and American Business. So describe for us what you see as the dilemma.
Well, I think a perfect example. I don't know if you've been following the Peng Shuai, Chinese tennis player who disappeared in China after coming out for with Zhong Gaoli's accusation that he sexually harassed her, and there was all kinds of other stuff that was sort of a Me Too type of stance.
By the way, let's just make sure everybody knows. So this is the tennis player that went missing. She was I guess, primarily a doubles player. I'd never heard of her, but quite a successful doubles Chinese player, accusing a high-level official of sexual misconduct. His name kind of rolled off your tongue. Is this somebody that you had heard of before, this official?
Zhong Gaoli was, yeah, of course, because, well, first of all, Peng Shuai was #1 in the world at doubles. And then I think she got as high as maybe 13 or 14 as a singles player. So she was a major player. And she was also a first coming out of China. Like there was a big, she was sort of a Yao Ming type of idol there. But if you look at Zhong Gaoli, he was a member of the standing committee of the Chinese Communist Party. And the standing committee is the most important part of the Chinese Communist Party, other than whoever's running that, which at this time is Xi Jinping. Before that was Hu Jintao. There's only 7 members of the standing committee. So you're looking at Xi Jinping and 6 others. That's how powerful they are. And that's out of 92 million Chinese Communist Party members and out of a country of 1.4 billion. So you're talking about the highest point of the pyramid. And to come out and say something against a standing committee member is probably a guarantee of being disappeared or jailed forever or even killed. And Peng Shuai was not immune to that. And we've even seen it with less harsh criticism of the Chinese Communist Party from very, very high profile people like Jack Ma. So going back to your question about the $1 trillion dilemma, when Peng Shuai disappeared and the tennis community started to get worried, they brought what I think the Chinese Communist Party was looking to do, which was sort of brush something under the rug, keep it a tempest in a teapot. No one talks about it. There's too much business in China in order to criticize that, and companies and individuals know that that's a problem if you do it. So hopefully it all goes away. But Peng Shuai was beloved by particularly the women's tennis community, and they would not give up on it. They were like, this is crazy. They sort of came out and supported it. They demanded to see her. It became not a tempest in a teapot, but expanding beyond that. And what was amazing is that the sheer momentum of all of that, I think, became so strong that the WTA, the Women's Tennis Association, had no dilemma, right? Their dilemma without all that momentum would be, oh, geez, a member of our community is missing, disappeared, or now under arrest for things that she didn't break a crime, commit a crime for. She was actually speaking out about a crime against her. That's a problem. But what do we do as the WTA? We have 10, 11 events over there, some of our highest profile and most, biggest budgeted and biggest prize money events are in China. What do? Do we, come out in support of her, which means we're going to destroy our business in China? Or do we just turn a blind eye to it and pretend like we don't notice it? Right. And that's the $1 trillion dilemma that every company, entity, celebrity, athlete is constantly facing if they have business in China.
Well, the WTA did what I think you and I would say is the right thing by pulling out of China in light of what happened to her. But in addition, you've got a bunch of superstar athletes in the WTA, for instance, Serena and Venus Williams, that have to make their own decisions. Do you happen to know, have individuals come out and said they're pulling out of China, for instance, Serena?
Most of the women players have come out. I mean, I think Osaka was the first one, and then everybody from Martina Navratilova to Chris Evert to all the modern day players to a lot of the men's players came out in support, and that momentum essentially took the dilemma away from the WTA because they really had no choice. Now, I'd like to believe they did what was right because that's what they wanted to do, and maybe that is the case, but they didn't really have a choice. They had to come out and support, and boom, their business is gone. Okay. The NBA, when Daryl Morey came out and in 2019 in October and tweeted his support for the Hong Kong protesters, the NBA was faced with that same dilemma. And what did they do? Well, initially they came out and said, hey, he has a right to say that. And boom, NBA off of CCTV, their broadcast networks. And today it's still off like 2 years, right? I mean, the numbers are very low that I see out there estimates, but you're talking $1 billion in business, right? Lost, vanished. And market value of teams like the Houston Rockets to the Boston Celtics to the Philadelphia 76ers, all three do not exist in China in any form. Merchandise on streaming platforms, you name it, they are persona non grata. The amount of market cap that each one of those teams lost from China losing that business is huge, right? But the NBA essentially took a stand and then they backed off it. And by the way, they're still getting penalized for it, but they saw the dilemma. They went in the right direction. It backfired. Now they went in the wrong direction. Stay quiet. I mean, Enes Kanter's out there continuing to talk about it. No one's really backing him other than the Boston Celtic team. So you see this dilemma and the way corporate America is working with it. And for the most part, no one's going in the direction of the WTA. And that is the dilemma. The dilemma is how much money are we making there? How much money do we lose? And what is the sacrifice in order to do the right thing? And I got a lot to talk about on this one.
So I know. I mean, it goes all over the place. Because one thing I was going to say is when we talk about the dilemma, well, why is it a dilemma? Well, there's multiple reasons why it's a dilemma, right? So you've got the human rights issues. You've got the fact that they're out there, China's out there stealing stuff. So if you're doing business there, whatever you're doing, potentially they're stealing. And the fact that we are feeding the dragon, as you title your book, in the sense that they're our geopolitical enemy. China is our key geopolitical enemy, yet we're making them bigger and bigger by doing all this business with them. I mean, we didn't do this kind of business with the Soviet Union. There was probably virtually no business with the Soviet Union. And yet here we are making our geopolitical enemy wealthier and wealthier.
Yeah. And by the way, I got to give credit to my wife because there's a moment like when you write a book like I did, or you look back at after the Daryl Morey tweet is really where I woke up to the insanity of what I was involved with and how misguided it was. And I'm going, oh my God, I'm just as complicit as the NBA. That's the moment. But as I wrote the book, I thought of the moments, in hindsight where I should have seen it. And one of them was my wife when I was trying to get Marvel to do some extra inputting of China relevancy into Iron Man 3. My wife overheard a phone call I was having with one of the head creatives at Marvel. And she was like, wow, you're being pretty hardcore in what you're trying to push. It seems almost like you're slamming China propaganda into the movie. And I was like, no. What we're trying to do is open up the market to products and services of Hollywood and of America. It creates jobs, grows GDP growth, and it spreads the aspirational qualities of democracy. Like I love you, hun, but like this is my territory. And she's like, are you sure it's the right thing to do? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, it seems to me like you're feeding the beast. And you know what happens when you feed the beast too much? It becomes uncontrollable. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, oh, we're actually feeding the dragon. I said, that's interesting. And she's like, well, you're going to get there someday where you can't control it anymore. And that's where we are, right? We have fed it for so long that now it's our biggest competitor on the global stage, whether military, economy, in the political sphere. I mean, the amount of influence they're pushing around the world in their narrative, in their soft power influence, in what they want the rest of the world to see as China is massive. Like, we have fed this beast for too long, and we need to be careful moving forward that we don't continue this crazy, reckless engagement.
Yeah. And does that need to happen kind of company by company, recognizing this and changing behavior? Or is it something that has to happen more at the Washington, D.C. level?
Well, if it happens company by company, it becomes a bunch of sacrificial lambs, right? Like, LeBron James, as much as we all want him to stand up and say, I don't stand for what China's doing, X, Y, and Z. Well, you know what? He'll lose his $30 million a year. Somebody else will come in, take those deals, and life moves on, right? And he loses everything. It's only a united we stand sort of leverage point that's going to get this done.
Thank you again to Chris Fenton. You can check out his book, Feeding the Dragon: Inside the $1 Trillion Dilemma Facing Hollywood, the NBA, and American Business. You can find it just about anywhere books are sold. Thank you to our producer, Michael Parker. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back soon with another episode of The Hidden Truth Show.
Thank you for listening to The Hidden Truth Show with Jim Breslow. You can find us at hiddentruthshow.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, The Hidden Truth Show. Join us again next week for another episode of Hidden Truth Show with Jim Breslow.